Okay, so thank you for viewing again. It's been a long time since we've been here. We're going to be looking at Keri Waza, fundamentals, and looking at the different ways to actually do some keris. And helping me here today is Sensei Keri. Thank you. Two big influences in my karate training is one with Takamizawa Sensei and obviously Sensei Schmidt. So with Takamizawa, it was a thank you very much to him because he was very safety conscious. He didn't like us to lock our knees out because of the jarring. Yes, I have got a bit of arthritis, but apart from that, my knees are still okay. Sensei Schmidt, what did I learn from Sensei Schmidt, Keri Waza? Quite a lot actually. The main thing that took away from him is that when he was younger and at the university in his karate days, one of his senpais came up behind him and kicked him in the back and caused quite a devastating injury, which I don't think he ever recovered from. So what did he do? He actually adapted his keris to compensate. And I'm not a natural keri because I'm an Anglo-Saxon physique, long body and short legs, which doesn't lend itself to kicking Jodan. So, and while we're on the subject of kicking Jodan, when I first started, we never used to kick Jodan. It was lower the better. If you can kick them in the abdomen, everything was superb. And then it was only until all the Bruce Lee and the Kung Fu films started to come around that people started doing kicking Jodan. So I really struggled with that, I have to admit. So, and funnily enough, after training one of the days, I did actually have a discussion with Takamizawa about it. And he said exactly the same thing when they came over to England back in the 60s. Didn't really kick Jodan. And the only thing that prompted them to do that was they were competing against boxing clubs up north, South Wales, Midlands. So they started doing jumping kicks and kicking Jodan. So really 70s and that sort of introduced the kicking Jodan. But in Japan, it wasn't really introduced until maybe the late 70s. Also with Sensei Schmidt, that fortitude of doing his mawashi geri, I think it was 1,000 times a day. I'm sure it was exaggerated, the figure that he practiced, but you know, he really tried, and at the end he actually published the book Dynamic Kicking, so he must have done something right. So he adapted, and I'm not a natural kicker, so I have to adapt. And that's really the story of your karate if you're training. Some things you might find difficult to do. It might be a junzuki, it might be a particular kata, it might be a particular kick. But just as long as you try and you adapt it, especially when you get older, try and work with your body, not against it. That's not good for anybody. And it shows in your technique if you're struggling. If you work with your body, that's good. When you're teaching keris, Keri Waza, then try and be aware of the terminology. The general word for kicking, and Takamizawa Sensei didn't like us to use the word kick, right? It's keri. Try not to use the word geri by itself, because in Japan, it's not a very nice word, just using the word geri. It actually means that you're, okay, it means diarrhea. So try not to use the word geri by itself, all right? And then kete. So if you're talking about geris, don't use the word geri, use keri. Yeah? If you're using the word geri, you must put a word in front of it, like my geri or mawashi geri, not mawashi geri. Got told off several times for that. It's mawashi geri. That's the way you're supposed to pronounce it, mawashi geri. Sokuto geri, Ushiro geri. If you're using the word kete, then it's the Kerry before the technique. So kete junzuki, kete gakuzuki, kete junzuki no tsukame, kete gakuzuki no tsukame. So try and use those terminologies, and please try not to use geri by itself. It's important that you understand that you need to tense your foot or put your foot in a correct position. It's like punching with an open hand. You really have to know how to clench your fist. So similar sort of things happens with your feet. So ball of the foot, which is a common technique, it's like Sikan for this. So yeah, koshi, ball of the foot. Yeah, Sokuto, knife edge of the foot. Yeah, hansoku, top edge, mainly for your mawashi geri. Yeah, and then kakuto, heel, for Ushiro geri. So try and remember those names. Try and exercise them. So with your exercises, you can use ball of the foot and then stretch your Achilles. Ball of the foot, Achilles. Ball of the foot, Achilles. And also, when you go back on the Achilles, it's good to try and, not wobble, but to try and find your centre of gravity. And your toes, try and make sure you work them backwards and forwards. Next one is Sokuto. So, raising the ball of the large toe and pushing down, then changing. Ich, ni, sa, shi, oh, right. Try not to do them with your knees. Just, your knees will move, but try and keep it to the minimum. Then when you get good at that, just change the one. Then swap again. This is pretty good when you are, good practice for when you're doing something else. Maybe at work, you're sitting there, you're reading, maybe you're watching a film or something, then, take your shoes off and just practice. Find the time for it. You can always find the time for this. Yeah? So work on your feet because you need to tense them. You need to position them, ready for the impact, depending on which keri you're doing. So when we were training with Kamizawa Sensei, he actually came up with a numbering system. I won't go through those numbering systems now, but for those of you who had the privilege of training with him, then I'm sure what I'm going to be talking about now, you'll pick up the references and maybe, hopefully, imagine Kamizawa Sensei is there. I'm just going to reiterate what Kamizawa took us through. So, I'll be mainly using Tatai Seishan stance for doing the Keri Waza. And we have covered that in a previous one, and maybe we can put a bit of a link at the bottom to explain why we use Tatai Seishan rather than Zenkutsu Dachi stance. Don't want to repeat that. So if you see me in Tatai Seishan while we're doing the Keris, then that's the reason why. So, first of all, when you're doing a maigeri, we're talking about maigeris now, and most of the keris that I will be doing will be kiage, not kokami. There are instances where we do use kokami, say in basai, and you pull and do the sokuto. I'll demonstrate that later. But mainly kiage. So, when you start maigeri, obviously your body weight and your hip, your front heel comes in, but you lift the ball of the foot. I won't use this part yet, I'll just concentrate on, instead of pushing, you try and lift the ball of the foot. If I push, it opens my torso up for attack. If I lift the ball of the foot, it's actually on the trajectory It doesn't have to create an arc with the ankle. So remember to lift the ball of the foot first. Next item is your knee position. Try and lift the knee to the highest place it will go to, before and after the geri. Yeah? Don't start to extend the foot before, because it looks like a backward or a reverse geri. You actually release the Kerry before it's reached the height of the knee. So, next is to actually pull the foot back as quickly as possible. It's not only how you extend the foot, how quickly you extend the foot, but it's also how quickly you can return the foot. You don't want to throw the foot out because your opponent will catch it and sweep you. So you really need to make sure that you're pulling these kicks back so that they can't grab them. So, here. Next is, you need to keep your geri in this elastic zone. And to keep that, you do not drop your knee, because then it becomes a push. You drop the knee, it becomes a push. So how can you tell that? One way is to lift your knee up, hold your hand at the top and the bottom, and you can feel, when you start extending your leg, you can feel the one muscle working, and then when it gets to a certain extent, all of a sudden the other muscle starts working. So one will start working, the other one's not evident. When you get to that position, the muscle stops and the other one takes over. So instead of the Kerry, it becomes like a push. So how do you do that? You basically lift your knee. It doesn't have to be high. Put your hand underneath, hand at the top, and just extend it. And you can feel. And this is about where you need to start the pulling back. Obviously, it's like a car when you're braking. It will carry on further, but that's the time to bring it back. Not when your leg is locked out. Literally feel your muscles working and the changing aspect of it. Next one is to make sure that you're not just creating an arc with the Kerry. So if I can use Sensei here. So if you just lift and kick. Can you see it's just making an arc, and you rub. You need to make sure that you are using your hip to straighten out this arc. So when you're pushing your kick, you're carrying, doing the geri, you try and push the hip forward. That hip going forward. Without that hip move, all I'm doing is cleaning my bottom of my foot on Kerry's gi, which I'm sure he's not too impressed with. Gosh, thank you. So geri again, try and lift the ball of the foot. Try and get your knee as high as possible. Try and be aware that you don't drop your knee. Try and be aware of when you need to start stopping or breaking the geri, so as you're not jarring the knee every time you do a kick, because this won't help you at all, jarring the knee. Next one is to try and make sure you're putting your hip into your geri. Okay, mawashi geri. Mawashi geri is should be treated very similar to geri. The only difference is there's a slight angle. But with any type of mawashi geri, Sokuto, there's all variants, and I'll try and go into those. Before I found Kamizawa Sensei, I ventured to different styles of karate and just trained and tried to take in some information from them. And the main thing that came out of it was that we tend to train linear. Yeah, so when we do mai geri or mawashi geri, it's always done up and down the room. Yeah. So mawashi geri. There's different ways to do mai geri. There's with the ball of the foot. That creates more penetration, rather than using the top of the foot, which is more of a slap. I'm sure it's more than that, but yeah, you need to go into the mawashi geri. So looking at different styles and comparing it to wado-ryu, yes, for beginners and going through your Q grades, we go up and down doing mawashi geri. But later on, you need to identify where you do this mawashi geri and what position you need to be in. So the association that I belong to, later on in the Q grades and Dan grading, we do okuriashi, Yoko okuriashi. Yoko, and then the mawashi geri. Let me try and explain. From here, I start the mawashi geri. Sensei Kerry can actually see this mawashi geri from a long way away. From as soon as I start to do the mawashi geri, he sees it. Yeah, quite early. Fighting stance. And this is 180 degrees. So it's a long journey for this Kerry to do. If I do Yoko okuriashi, can you see now how I've cut the angle right the way down? So instead of 180 degrees, now it's about 100 degrees. Yeah, then the kick. Kerry has less time to react to it, especially if I'm using my body and my attack. So once you understand the mechanics of mawashi geri, then try and be aware of cutting down time, cutting down distance by soto, okuriashi, then your mawashi geri. Also, if you've done that, your keri, your mawashi geri will penetrate more, because it's not at the end of its journey. Doing it from here, rather than cutting through and the opponent's here, your mawashi geri has more penetration. So when you do mawashi geri, it's not only thinking about your foot, whether you do ball of the foot or ashikubi, but because my knee has gone past, the flow will go through and penetrate more. And it doesn't matter about distance, because mawashi geri is not just only for the foot, but it's to do with the shin, the knee, the thigh. It depends on your mai, it depends on your distance. So it can be shin, it can be hiza. Not only chudan, jodan, which I won't be demonstrating. Yeah, also inside, also for sweep. So the mechanics of mawashi geri can be used from the sweep to the inside or the outside of the leg, chudan, also josakuti, ball of the foot, koshi, So try and progress what you're doing with your mawashi geri. Obviously, having a new hip doesn't help, but I'm still training. I'm still trying to make it quicker. I'm still trying to make it, my muscles work, training. So keep on pushing. So when you come to do Keri Waza, it helps to understand the mechanics of it, and it's just not the mechanics of the technique, but how the keris are split. Basically, you have 4 basic keris, but that can be as complicated as you like. But in general, 4. And I've been watching Star Trek too much, but there's 2 groups. The first group, mai geri, mawashi geri. The second group is Yoko geri or Sokuto, yeah, and Ushiro geri. And the way to distinguish the 2 and makes you aware of why is because the first group has 1 hinge point. The other group has 2 hinge points. Let me try and elaborate. The first group is your mai geri and mawashi geri, which relies on 1 hinge point, major hinge point, and that is your knee. For Yoko geri, Sokuto, and Ushiro geri, you use 2 hinge points. So with mai geri, it's your knee. With mawashi geri, it's your knee. With Yoko geri, it's not just the knee, it's your hip. It's your hip that has to work. And it's quite difficult to do because you have to coordinate 1 hinge point with the other. They have to work at the same time. That's why people have issues learning Sokuto for this first time, and Ushiro geri. Because it's not only understanding 1, 2, but it's getting them to open up and close at the same time, to coordinate them, to time them. Yep. Same with Ushiro geri. 1, 2. So hopefully from those demonstrations you can see both hinges working, or the 1 hinge working. Okay, Sokuto or Yoko geri. There are a multitude of ways of doing this Keri Waza. Again, in Wadō-Ryu, we train, up and down the room, doing Sokuto. So I learned 1 way, or either 2 ways, or either 3 ways, or either 4 ways of doing Sokuto. So the one thing I did really appreciate when I did go and train with the Shotokan guys was that they actually trained either behind and did the Sokuto, or they stepped in front and did their Yoko geri, which made sense to me because if you're sparring with somebody, they're attacking from there, it's usually a mai geri or a mawashi geri. Yeah, you wouldn't jump and then do a Sokuto to the side. Sokuto is if you're being attacked from here, or you find yourself in a sideward position. Maybe you've had a foray in sparring and you move to the side, they're here, then you use your side kick. Same here, when you're doing your Ushiro geri. Maybe you push back. You don't do this in fighting, in sparring, because you've shown your back. Usually it's bum, 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 and can be used more of a defensive technique. There's only 2 people that I've ever seen score with Ushiro geri when sparring or fighting. That was Takamizawa Sensei, and the other one was a friend of mine from down Temple days. I believe he's living in the Bahamas now, Humphrey Arnett. So if you're out there, Humphrey, hi. Yeah, so I've only ever seen two karate exponents actually school with Ushiro geri. Yeah. So coming back to Sokuto. Sokuto is actually the knife edge of the foot. But you can do, we'll go through the range of them. A mai Sokuto. And I was only shown this a few years ago by Katsutaka Sensei when we was at the winter course. And I found it quite enlightening. So he was watching for a Kerry to come in, right? Okay, so he would side slip slowly and he would go into their joint using Sokuto. So Sokuto, but it was a mai Sokuto. Next way is to Takamizawa Sensei would be moving his body and lifting and Yoko geri. So he would try and, even though he was training up and down the room, he would take time to move the body up and then do the Kerry, do Sokuto. Biggest thing that came out of that was, it wasn't this. That ends up to be doing a knee mawashi geri using a Sokuto foot. Sokuto is a thrust and kiage, but you have to be in a sideways position. So doing it this way made sure that your foot came to the other side of the centre line. But then the two hinge to work together to be a stamping technique or a thrust or kiage. The other one is when you change your mai Sokuto into your Yoko geri. So here, but then you thrust in. With the mai, then thrust. When you've practiced those, and again in the association that I belong to, we try and again use Yoko okuriashi, so as then we can do the Sokuto. So again it would be, you would be moving. So I'm positioning myself to use a sideways Kerry. Yeah? Again, moving, maybe covering this hand or the other hand, whichever, but move. Move. And Sokuto. Try not to think you've just got to do these Kerrys in a linear motion. You need to try and position your body to do the Sokuto. Ushiro geri. Again, it's a linear Kerry. And associated with your mai geri and your Sokuto, because you need to use it forward or rather a rearward movement, and with your heel, but you need to use your two hinge points. Okay. Whenever you use Ushiro geri, make sure you use in your arm as well, as this is part of the movement. Use your arm and your hip to do the Kerry. Try not to do this. What you've done there is what we would call mudana. It's a wasted move. Because I have lifted this up, it's created a curve, an arc, before I actually do the Kerry. So this arc doesn't generate anything. So if I managed to put a pencil on my knee and this was a blank piece of paper, then you would see a quadrant and then a straight line. So I'd advise that you bring your knees together as the start. Not stop, but as the start. Then it's more of a straight line then. Okay? With all Kerrys, whenever you lift this foot, you are starting the Kerry. It shouldn't be lift, stop, kick, stop, down, stop. It should be one continuous movement. So if you can get rid of this or remove this arc, so you bring it straight from here through. Use your arm and Ushiro geri. My bad habit is I don't look over my shoulder. I should do. And I'm always telling myself off. Okay? I found it really difficult. So I broke it down. So here, if you just turn your head, it's not enough. I have to turn this hip as well. Not just this, I can't see. But this, now it aligns my foot to the Sensei center, the center as well. So I can see, and I've actually positioned my hip. So look, but make sure you turn your hip slightly as well. Don't overcook it, because you end up doing a Yoko geri. Yeah, side here. Look, look, look. Too much. Then you end up doing Sokuto. So watch how much you turn the hip. Sometimes it's difficult to get kakuto. But just as long as you're pushing that heel out, I find that if I use Sokuto, it tenses the foot. It puts the heel into the right position for contact with the heel. Okay, for Ushiro geri, try not to injure your knee by trying to spin, but try and use your heel to find the direction. It's not only that, it's for distance as well. Again, this is Takamizawa, but it's like shooting a cannon. You need to know the direction, and then you need to know the distance before you fire the missile, before you fire the Kerry. Okay? So, just for practice, yeah? If I'm here, to come back to get my distance. Or if I'm here, I have to kuriashi, push in before I do the Ushiro geri. For direction, if I move this heel, if Sensei Kerry moves anyway, round an arc, then you use your heel as a direction finder, because that's the way your Kerry is going to go. But try not to. You'll find that if your foot lands too early, you'll start twisting your knee and you'll start twisting your ankle. So, point, and you Ushiro geri. And don't forget to look over your shoulder and turn your hip. Yeah. So, wash. More work for me to do. Wash. Okay, so Ushiro geris. Obviously, it all depends which your instructor, your sensei, wants you to do them. When I'm doing, as I said before, Kihon, Keri Waza, I try and make mine as clean as possible, because then it's easier. It's easier to control. So I've seen this as well. It's not only spinning on here. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to damage my knee or my ankle. But yeah, they don't pull the Kerry back. It's just one way out and then dropping down. If you do that, you're committed to go that way. If you pull your Kerry back, you can most probably do it again and again. Or if I don't feel anything, I don't feel any contact, I can make an escape. So whenever you're doing a Kerry, whether it's my geri, mawashi geri, Sokuto, try and bring it back to the centre. Several reasons. One, you can, as I said before, you can do the Kerry again and again and again, hopefully. But also, things in life needs to be balanced. Black, white, plus, minus, open, close. Everything has its opposite, and creates this this yin-yang, this balance in life. Yeah. So when you throw your mai geri out, pull it back. Mawashi geri same, Sokuto same, Ushiro geri, pull it back, make it clean. You got full control of it. Also, if you leave your leg sticking out, no matter what, you then find it difficult to keep your balance. After all, if you're standing on one leg to do a Kerry, it doesn't matter which one it is, you need balance. So if you kick your leg out, you bias the weight this way, and the same that way, the same back here. So if you want to keep your balance ready for the next technique, whether it's, a mai geri, and then you're going for a mawashi geri, I need to have my balance at the end of the one Kerry before I go to the other one. So try and bring your body mass into the centre again, over this leg, over this leg, especially in your Kihon, Keri Waza. One of the big messages that I took away with Kamizawa Sensei was the supporting foot and how to use it and what not to use. And a lot of people use this spinning on the supporting foot. He would say that spinning creates friction, and friction, as most of us know, is how you stop your car. It's to slow it down. So if we can eliminate that spin, then all the better. So when we do mai geri, we try and release it. We're creating this torsion and then popping. So there's no spinning on the foot. Yeah, same with some mawashi geris. You put your foot in the place straight away, not same with Sokuto. He would move the foot into its kamishitoi, rice paper thickness. So it wasn't a big move, but this drop in the hip and cleaner. Spinning, yes, I do use it occasionally. For sometimes with mawashi geri, sometimes with the Yoko geri. It has its uses, but when I'm trying to use my Kihon, Keri Waza, then I try and keep it as clean as possible. I'm trying to keep my balance, my posture. Next is the foot, shin and thigh position. Basically this is for all keris. Mai geri, mawashi geri. Mawashi geri is related to Sokuto. Then here. For Ushiro geri. So if you learn the one position for your foot, your shin, your thigh relative to your body, yeah. So if you can practice that foot position, you're covering all four keris. Wish. So using some of the Keri Waza in your katas. Again, in the good old bad old days when I was training around all different styles and different clubs, some of the Shotokan clubs, they did Pinen Yondan, Ian Yondan, get that right, which I like because it was a side position and they would use Yoko geri. But in Wadō-Ryu, we do Yoko mai geri. So your Yoko geri can be a mai geri. So try and leave your body here. If you turn, this is just a mai geri. This should be Yoko mai geri. Using your Yoko geri for your Sokuto. And that's why it's important to make sure that you bring your foot, your knee, your Kerry position past the center for it to be thrusting down. So in Basai, and I'm going to use Kerry's skin here to grab because he's got my habit of pulling this up. Bad. So here, yeah, when you use Sokuto, comes up and it goes into here, into the joint. If it's just a kick, Sokuto there, doesn't have the same effect. And I'm pretty sure that's not what this demonstration and part of your kata is about. It should be about up and in. Into here. Also when you pull in, if you pull down, it's not so effective. If the kata does this pull up, it pushes more of the force down into the hip. Okay, so when you're doing the kata, make sure when you do the ket, pull up because of this demonstration. Here, up, pull up. When you are doing your Keri, Kihon Waza, then you need to practice your posture and your balance. Try not to lock the leg out. This makes it all top heavy. After all, the lower you are to the ground, the less balance you need. If you're lying down on the floor, you don't need any balance at all. So try and keep this knee soft and practice your geri, mawashi geri, Sokuto, and your Ushiro geri.
So welcome to this section of the Kihon Fundamental video series. Been discussing Kerry. Sensei Roger's done a very in-depth look. Having a name, Kerry, is probably thought was a good idea. I learned a little bit about kicking technique and Kerry, so maybe a slightly different look at some aspects of the technique. For anybody who's watched the video series on kata, I did a section on pretty versus practical. If you haven't seen it, basically something like Naihanshi, where this is the pretty. When you get into a real scrap, you get into the practical, where you're guarding and covering. And you can apply the same logic to Kerry, to kicking techniques. As Sensei mentioned in his section, old school, all the kicks are very low. Sokuto was to the knee. Geri to the shin. Geri to the groin. Never went above belt level because all the time you're on one foot, you're at the risk of being taken over. So went low. I think we, as Sensei mentioned, martial arts in cinema, and certainly into kumite competition, high kicks became more in vogue. So on the theme of pretty versus practical, high kicks are very pretty. If you're in a competition and you can score a nice Jodan technique, you'll score an ippon, maybe win the competition. If you're doing your grading and you can do a nice Sokuto, fairly high, might squeeze some brownie points and the examiner might say, oh, that looked good. Is it really practical? There is a natural limit to what your body wants to go to. You can do stretching exercises and get a little bit more flexible in your muscles and your tendons, but there is a limit to your joints. The modern term is hypermobile, what we used to call double jointed. There are some people, that's the natural limit of their hip, double jointed, hypermobile, it can go further. But you will have a natural limit, mechanically. If you've got tight hamstrings, tight glutes, you can do stretches, and there's some great online content for that, and you can get a little bit better at it. But really, is it practical? Your gi has got an extra panel in the groin to allow your high kicks. Then you get changed and go out and you're wearing a pair of tight jeans. What are you going to do? Your feet, barefoot, nice and fast. But when you get changed, you put a pair of shoes or trainers on, your foot is suddenly double, trebled in weight. So that's going to slow you down even more. So you have to think about sort of kicking in a practical way. I wear lycra infused jeans, so they stretch. One benefit is, yes, you can kick higher, but Kihon Fundamentals, who founded Shotokan, one of his sayings was, beginners have stances, advanced students have natural postures. And by that is, by years and years of training and kata practice, you will naturally hit a Zenkutsudachi or a Kibadachi in a situation. Well, if you're wearing tight jeans and you try to hit a Kibadachi and you can only get to here because they're so tight, it's not practical, and it's certainly not practical to rely on high kicking wearing tight jeans. We're into winter now, lots of fallen leaves on the ground and it rains, very slippy. You might be on grass, you might be on rough, unbroken ground. So Sensei mentioned about sort of pivoting on the balls of your feet. If you're on broken ground, grass, wet leaves, all of a sudden it's going to get very slippery. So the lower you can keep your kicks, the safer you're going to be. So pretty versus practical. Yes, it looks very pretty and looks very nice, but in a real situation, maybe not. And you also have to consider, if you need to do a lot of warming up to do a high kick, then it's not going to be a self-defense technique. You know, this is my natural limit without warming up. I know I can't go higher than I can go higher if I warm up, but there's no practical use for it. So you need to discover your mechanical limits, your physical hip movement. You need to have flexible hip flexors, glutes, hamstrings, which you can improve if you put enough time into it. But you need to know your practical limit for an instantaneous self-defense situation. And if you need a lot of warming up to achieve a level, even if it's Chudan, that's not really practical. So have a little think about that, because ultimately you're hopefully never going to be in a violent situation in the streets, but you never can tell. So you need to be prepared for that sort of thing. So we discussed pretty versus practical on your physical limits of your joints and your flexibility of muscles, tendons. There are some little cheats, if you like, where you can get a little bit more height by using your muscles in a constructive and helpful way. Sensei Bruce Payne, founder of Shinkido, very knowledgeable on anatomy and muscle chains and how muscles work. And he's come up with, they're not for higher kicking, it's actually to make sure the body is connected when you kick. So when you do land a kick, you don't bounce off because the body is connected and everything is lined up and locked in place. One of the benefits of that is it will allow you to kick a little bit higher. So it's generally referred to as the hip flexors, but it's actually multiple groups. You've got the psoas muscle, the sartorius, the iliacus. These form the hip flexors. So if you're going to try a high kick, if you contract the hip flexors and the oblique muscles in your sides, you can contract these and that will allow the knee to come higher. So that's about my limit without contraction. Contract everything and the knee will go higher. And that gives you the added benefit of you stabilised your hips, your pelvis, so it's going to be a harder impact if you make contact. So it's a quick cheat. Contract your obliques, contract your hip flexors, and it will pull your knee higher. If you're doing mawashi geri and Sokuto, you see a lot of people when they kick and they completely side on. The problem with that, that's back to the mechanical limit of your hips. Wherever you can lift your foot to, that's about the limit of your kick. So if you're trying to kick high and you're side on, you're going to reach the mechanical limits. If you look around the corner, as we describe it down at Shinkido, when you do the kick, instead of your head being on this complete linear line, you look around the corner. There's my limit. As I look around the corner, my foot starts to raise. So when you kick, instead of being here, look around the corner and the kick goes higher. And especially with Sokuto, instead of trying to kick and you're in a complete straight line, do your kick, look around the corner and the kick will go higher. It's a variation if whatever your limit is doing the splits, if you do this exercise where I'm looking around the corner, so I can go a lot lower here than trying to do the splits. So if you think about that as your technique, that's another little cheat for getting a little bit more height. But don't forget, outside, it's not really practical. Footwear, clothing, slippery surfaces, try and stay low.
Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed their demonstrations of Keri Waza. It was my nemesis. It wasn't the one I was looking forward to doing it because it would have been quite easy to get my senpai from Temple Days down here to do it. It would have made it very easy, usually in Codrington. But you know what? New hip, Achilles, we're all of a certain age, so I hope this has been helpful to those students who are struggling. And we're still carrying on. Yeah, I'll carry on even if I can only do a keri to the hiza. So, yeah, find your passion. Main thing is, don't fight your own body. Find where you're comfortable and work with it and adapt, as Sensei Schmitz does. And he makes a fantastic job of making it look so easy. So frustrating. Hey. Arthur Meek has just written a book. Buy the book, then you can find out what it means. And he also mentions, funnily enough, when I was reading through it, about these low kicks. And when they come to do the high kicks, I wasn't very aware of them. But he took a full advantage of it. So, yeah, if you get a chance, buy the book. If you meet him, and he'll even sign it for you. All right, so it's good, interesting read. So, yeah, go source the chestnuts. Whoosh.